The Grand Conclave Hall floated in the darkness of space, attached to Station Zenith 7 like a jewel on a crown. Inside, 12 species sat in their designated sections, each platform designed to accommodate their unique physiologies. The Thyssen delegation occupied the blue-lit section to the left, their tall frames casting long shadows. The Vacrine Empire's representatives filled the red zone on the right, their multiple arms gesturing as they spoke. In the center, positioned between all the others, sat the humans. Ambassador Daewon Park looked tired. 3 days of negotiations would do that to anyone, but the weariness in his eyes went deeper than lack of sleep. He sat with 16 other human delegates, all wearing simple gray uniforms without decoration or rank insignia. They had been listening for 72 hours straight, taking notes, asking careful questions, but offering nothing in return. The Vacrine speaker stood at the central podium, all 6 of his arms spread wide in a gesture meant to convey reason and compromise. His voice echoed through the translation devices every delegate wore. We propose the following territorial adjustment. The Thyssen Collective will retain control of the Outer Rim colonies established before the year 2247. In exchange, the Vacrine Empire will receive administration rights over the Delta Sector mining operations. The human mediators have already confirmed this proposal meets the requirements of the Treaty of Sanctuary. Captain Jiwoo Nam of the Thyssen Diplomatic Corps leaned forward in her seat. She had been watching the humans carefully all day. Something felt wrong. The human delegates showed no reaction to the Vacrine proposal. No nods of approval. No frowns of concern. Nothing. The Vortan hierarchy representative clicked its mandibles together, the sound harsh even through the translators. The Vacrine proposal displaces 3 million Thyssen colonists. Where will they go? This is not compromise. This is surrender with better words. The Vacrine speaker's primary arm swept downward in frustration. Then the Thyssen Collective should not have established colonies in contested space. These territories were claimed by the Empire under the Expansion Accords of 2198. That accord was never ratified by the Galactic Council, Jiwoo said, keeping her voice level. The territories remain disputed under galactic law. The argument continued. It was the same argument they had been having for 3 days, just with different words. Jiwoo found her attention drifting back to the humans. Ambassador Daewon had opened a data tablet and was reading something. His expression changed so subtly that she almost missed it. His jaw tightened. His eyes narrowed. Then his face went completely blank. Daewon touched something on his tablet and every human delegate's device chimed softly. They all looked down. One by one, their expressions shifted through surprise, then understanding, then something that looked almost like sadness. The whole exchange took less than 30 seconds. The Vacrine speaker was still talking, proposing a timeline for the territorial transition, when Daewon stood up. The movement was so sudden and unexpected that the entire hall fell silent. 12 species turned to look at the human delegation. Daewon walked to the podium reserved for mediators. He did not bring his notes. He did not bring his tablet. He simply stood there and looked at each delegation in turn. When he finally spoke, his voice was quiet but clear. Humanity withdraws from these negotiations effective immediately. We will honor all existing treaties and defense pacts. We will maintain trade relationships with any species that wishes to continue them. But we will no longer participate in this process. I wish you all well. The silence that followed lasted exactly 5 seconds. Then chaos erupted. The Thyssen speaker leaped to his feet. You cannot withdraw. The Treaty of Sanctuary requires human mediation in all major territorial disputes. The treaty allows for withdrawal with cause, Daewon replied. We are invoking that clause. What cause? The Vortan representative's voice rose to a screech. You have said nothing for 3 days. You have participated in every session. What changed? Daewon looked at the Vortan delegate for a long moment. Everything, he said simply. And nothing. He turned and walked back to the human section. The other 16 delegates were already gathering their materials. They moved with practiced efficiency, closing tablets, organizing data chips, securing personal items. Within 2 minutes, they were ready to leave. The Vacrine speaker blocked their path to the exit. His 6 arms crossed over his chest in a gesture of absolute refusal. You will explain yourselves. You will tell us why you are abandoning the galaxy when we need you most. You owe us that much. Daewon stopped. For a moment, Jiwoo thought he might actually explain. But he simply said, "We owe you nothing but what our treaties require, and those treaties do not require us to watch this any longer." The humans walked around the Vakrine speaker and headed for the exit. Security forces started to move, but the Galactic Council's overseer raised a hand to stop them. The humans had broken no laws. They were simply leaving. Jiwoo watched them go. She saw the way they moved together, coordinated but not rushed. She saw the way Ambassador Daewon's shoulders were set, as if carrying a great weight, and she saw something else in their faces. Not anger, not contempt, but something worse. Disappointment. The doors closed behind the last human delegate. The hall remained silent for another 10 seconds. Then everyone started shouting at once. The Thyssen Collective demanded explanations. The Vakrine Empire threatened economic sanctions. The Vortan hierarchy accused the humans of cowardice. The smaller species, the ones who had been hoping human mediation would protect them from the larger powers, simply looked terrified. The Galactic Council's overseer tried to restore order, but it was useless. The carefully constructed framework of the peace negotiations had collapsed the moment the humans walked out. Without their mediation, there was no neutral party. Without their analysis, there was no trusted data. Without their presence, there was no reason for the larger powers to pretend to compromise. Jiwoo left the hall while the shouting continued. She walked to the observation deck and looked out at the stars. Somewhere out there, the human delegation was boarding their ship. She checked the station logs on her personal device. The humans had filed an immediate departure request. Their fleet carrier, the Indomitable, was already warming up its engines. She pulled up the communication logs, hoping to find some clue about what had made them leave. The last message received by the human delegation had come from Earth, encrypted with military-grade security. There was no way to read it without breaking a dozen treaties, but she did not need to read it to understand one simple fact. Something had happened on Earth or in human space, something important enough to make them abandon a negotiation that could determine the fate of billions, something they considered more important than preventing a galactic war. The Indomitable undocked from station, Zenith 7, 20 minutes after the humans left the conclave hall. Jiwoo watched it turn slowly in space, its massive hull catching the light from the nearby star. Then its engines flared bright blue and it jumped into faster-than-light travel. The humans were gone. The galaxy would have to solve its problems without them. And somehow, Jiwoo thought, that should have felt like abandonment. Instead, it felt like a warning. 2 weeks passed and nobody had heard anything from the humans except one official statement. It came from Earth's central government and said only this: humanity is attending to internal matters. We remain committed to our existing treaties, that was all. Every attempt to get more information failed. Every diplomatic channel remained politely open but utterly unhelpful. Admiral Heejin Ko stood on the bridge of her patrol ship, staring at the edge of human space. Her assignment was simple: watch the border and report any unusual activity. What she was seeing definitely counted as unusual. Human ships were moving everywhere. Cargo vessels, construction platforms, military escorts, civilian transports. They moved with clear purpose, following routes that suggested careful planning. But they were not coming out. They were all moving deeper into human territory. Energy readings, she asked her sensor officer. Massive spikes from the industrial worlds, the officer replied. Whatever they are building a lot of it. The power consumption in the Sol system alone has increased by 40%. Heejin frowned. 40% was not a gradual increase. That was emergency production levels. The kind of output you saw when a civilization prepared for total war. But the humans were not moving their fleets toward any borders. They were not making threats. They were not even responding to messages anymore. Keep monitoring, she said, and try to hail any human vessel that comes within communication range. They tried. Every day for 2 weeks they sent polite requests for information. Every request was met with the same response, delivered by Commander Taeyang Choi of the Outer Defense Fleet. His face appeared on their view screen each time, patient and professional. We appreciate your concern, he would say. We are not ready to discuss the conclave matters. Please respect our boundaries. Thank you. Then he would disconnect. No anger, no threats, just polite, absolute refusal to engage. The Galactic Council sent 3 separate delegations to Earth itself. The first delegation was led by the Thyssen Collective. Their ships approached Earth's orbital defense grid and were met by a small human patrol. Commander Taeyang appeared again, his message identical. We appreciate your visit. However, we are not ready for formal discussions. Please return to your territory. We will contact you when circumstances change. When will that be? The Thyssen ambassador demanded. We do not know yet, Taeyang replied. But we will inform the council when we do. Safe travels. The Thyssen delegation tried to push forward. The human patrol did not fire on them. They simply matched the Thyssen ship's movements, staying between them and Earth. After 6 hours of this, the Thyssen delegation gave up and left. The second delegation came from the Vortan hierarchy. They brought 3 times as many ships and made demands instead of requests. Commander Taeyang met them at the same location. He delivered the same message. When the Vortan commander threatened to force their way through, Taeyang's expression did not change. That would be a violation of our sovereignty and our treaties, he said calmly. We do not want conflict. Please leave our space. The Vortan ships powered up their weapons. 20 human warships appeared from nowhere, their cloaking fields dropping simultaneously. They did not power weapons. They did not take aggressive positions. They simply existed suddenly and undeniably present. The Vortan delegation left. The third delegation was different. It was led by Captain Jiwoo Nam, representing not a government but the Galactic Peace Organization. She came with only 1 small ship and no weapons. Commander Taeyang met her at the border, but this time his expression was softer. Captain Nam, he said, I remember you from the conclave. You asked good questions. I am still asking them, Jiwoo replied. Please, Commander. People are dying. The Vakreen and Thyssen have started fighting. Small skirmishes, but escalating. We need help. Taeyang was quiet for a moment. I cannot help you, Captain. Not yet, but I can tell you this. We did not leave because we stopped caring. We left because we started caring too much. I don't understand. I know, Taeyang said gently. I am sorry. Please go back. Tell them we are not their enemy. Tell them we are working on something important. And tell them to try very hard not to make things worse before we are ready. Ready for what? But Taeyang had already disconnected. Jiwoo returned to the Galactic Council with no answers and watched the situation fall apart. The skirmishes between Vakreen and Thyssen forces grew larger. 3 colony worlds were evacuated as fighting spread. The Vortan hierarchy began full military mobilization, claiming they needed to protect their interests from the chaos. The news networks went crazy. Every species had its own theories about what the humans were doing. Some said humanity was preparing for war against the entire galaxy. Others claimed the humans had discovered some terrible threat and were abandoning everyone else. A few suggested the humans had been replaced by infiltrators or had suffered some kind of collective breakdown. Dr. Sun-Hee Yang watched all this from her office at the Thyssen Institute for Xenopsychology. She had studied on Earth for 5 years, learned to speak 3 human languages, and written her dissertation on human decision-making patterns. She knew these theories were all wrong. She requested a meeting with Captain Jiwoo, and was surprised when the captain agreed immediately. They met in a small cafe near the institute, both of them exhausted from weeks of failed diplomacy. You studied humans, Jiwoo said without preamble. Tell me why they left. Sun-Hee stirred her tea slowly. Everyone assumes humans left because of something selfish. Because they wanted to protect themselves or because they gave up on us. But I studied their history. Humans do not give up, and they especially do not give up on people they have made commitments to. Then why? Because they saw something we did not see, Sun-Hee said. Before Ambassador Daewon walked out, he accessed the Conclave's historical archives. I checked the logs. He pulled every record of major galactic conflicts for the last 5,000 years. All of them. Jiwoo leaned forward. Why would he do that? Because humans are very good at pattern recognition, Sun-Hee explained. It is how they survived on their homeworld. They look at situations and ask themselves what happens next, not what they want to happen. What will actually happen based on historical data? And what did he see? Sun-Hee met her eyes. I think he saw that the negotiations were going to fail. Not might fail. Would definitely fail. And I think whatever they are doing now is their response to that certainty. Jiwoo sat back in her chair. But how could he know? We were making progress. Compromises were being discussed. Were they? Sun-Hee asked. Or were we just going through the motions of compromise while holding on to our real positions? Think about it, Captain. In 3 days of negotiation, did anyone actually give up anything important? Or did we just rearrange the same problems into different words? Jiwoo thought about the conclave sessions, the endless arguments about boundaries and resources, the way each species protected its core interests while pretending to be flexible about details, the compromises that satisfied nobody and solved nothing. You think they left because they knew we would fail? She said slowly. I think they left because they knew we were failing right then, Sun-hee replied. And I think they decided to stop participating in something they could not fix. But what are they doing instead? Sun-hee shook her head. I do not know. But whatever it is, they think it is more important than trying to save a peace process they have already predicted will fail. And if I know humans at all, that means they are working on something big, something that will change the situation completely. Jiwoo looked out the window at the city beyond. Ships were taking off from the spaceport, heading to defensive positions. The military buildup was visible everywhere now. The peace they had tried to save was already dead. The war everyone feared was beginning, and somewhere in human space, behind their polite silence and professional deflections, something was happening. Something the humans thought was important enough to risk everything. She just hoped they were right. 6 weeks after the humans walked out, Captain Jiwoo Nam received special clearance to investigate further. The Galactic Peace Organization was desperate for answers, and she had gotten closer to understanding the humans than anyone else. They gave her access to classified records and told her to find out what the humans had discovered. She started where Dr. Sun-hee Yang had suggested, with the conclave archives that Ambassador Daewon had accessed just before leaving. The records went back 5,000 years and covered every major conflict in recorded galactic history. There were hundreds of wars, thousands of smaller conflicts, and endless territorial disputes. Jiwoo enlisted help from Min-ho Sung, a young research assistant who specialized in historical data analysis. Together they spent days going through the records looking for whatever pattern Daewon had seen. It is all the same, Min-ho said on the 4th day, his voice frustrated. Every single major war follows the exact same pattern. Territorial disputes lead to negotiations. Negotiations produce compromises that satisfy nobody. The compromises hold for a few years. Then someone violates them because the underlying problems were never solved. And then war starts. Jiwoo rubbed her tired eyes. How many times has this pattern repeated? Min-ho checked his data. Every single major conflict in the database. 37 wars. All of them started the same way. And look at this, he pulled up a timeline. The average time between the final compromise and the start of war is 4.7 years. The longest peace lasted 8 years. The shortest lasted 18 months. So the humans looked at our negotiations and saw the same pattern. Jiwoo said slowly. They calculated how long our compromises would last. And realized it was pointless, Min-ho finished. We were not preventing war. We were just scheduling it. Jiwoo felt something cold settle in her stomach. She had spent weeks angry at the humans for abandoning the negotiations. Now she was starting to understand they had not abandoned anything. They had simply refused to participate in a process that was guaranteed to fail. She needed to confirm this theory. Through careful back-channel communications and several favors, she managed to arrange a meeting with Dr. Bora Kang, a human historian who had worked with Earth's delegation at the conclave. The meeting took place on a neutral station at the edge of human space. Bora arrived alone and looked uncomfortable. I can only share limited information, Bora said as soon as they sat down. I am not authorized to discuss current human activities or future plans. I understand, Jiwoo replied. I just want to know what you saw in the archives. What pattern made you leave? Bora was quiet for a long moment. Then she pulled out a data tablet and displayed a complex simulation. We ran the numbers. Every possible compromise suggested at the conclave. Every territorial adjustment. Every resource allocation. We ran them all through predictive models based on historical data and current political pressures. And what did you find? Every single path led to war within 5 years, Bora said flatly. Not some of them. Not most of them. All of them. The only variables were which species started fighting first and how long it took for everyone else to get pulled in. Jiwoo stared at the simulation. The models were sophisticated, using techniques she recognized from advanced diplomatic theory. The humans had not just looked at the data. They had analyzed it with every tool they had. But there must be some path to peace, she said. Some combination of compromises that would work. Bora shook her head. That is what we thought too, so we ran more simulations. Thousands of them. We included every possible variation of the proposed agreements. We even included scenarios where species made major sacrifices that nobody had actually offered. Do you know what we discovered? What? The problem is not the specific terms of any agreement, Bora explained. The problem is the underlying structure of galactic politics. Too many species competing for too few resources and too little space. Everyone expanding into the same territories. Everyone needing the same mineral deposits and habitable worlds. The incentives guarantee conflict. Negotiating over how to divide limited resources just delays the inevitable. So you gave up, Jiwoo said, and she could not keep the bitterness out of her voice. No, Bora said firmly. We refuse to participate in a broken system. There is a difference. What difference? People are dying while you hide behind your borders. Bora met her eyes. People would die anyway. That is what the data shows. The question we asked ourselves was this. Is there any point in trying to manage a decline into war, or should we spend our energy trying to change the fundamental situation? And you chose to change it, Jiwoo said. How? I cannot tell you that yet, Bora replied. But I can tell you we have not abandoned the galaxy. We have just stopped pretending that traditional diplomacy will save it. After the meeting, Jiwoo returned to her ship and sat in her quarters for a long time. The humans had seen something that seemed obvious once you looked at the data properly. The galaxy was fighting over scraps. Every species wanted to expand. Every species needed more resources, and there was only so much space and so many habitable worlds. Any agreement they reached would just be a temporary pause in the competition. Eventually, someone would break the rules because following them was worse than the risk of war. And once one species broke the rules, everyone else would respond. The whole system was designed to fail. She pulled up reports from the current conflict. The war had spread to 6 sectors now. The Vakrine and Thyssen were officially at war. The Vortan hierarchy had annexed 2 disputed territories, claiming they were stabilizing the region. Smaller species were choosing sides or trying to remain neutral, which just made them targets for both sides. Admiral Hee-Jin Ko sent her latest report from the human border. Activity continues to increase, the Admiral wrote. Multiple human fleets are gathering at the Galactic Rim. Long-range sensors detect massive construction operations in previously empty space. Purpose unknown. Humans still refuse all communication beyond basic acknowledgement. The Galactic Rim. Jiwoo pulled up a star chart and looked at the edge of explored space. There was nothing out there. No valuable systems. No habitable worlds. No resources worth claiming. Every species had surveyed that region and dismissed it as worthless. So why were the humans building things there? She checked the historical records again and found something interesting. 20 years ago, humans had proposed a joint exploration project to the Galactic Rim. They had wanted to survey deep space beyond the current borders, looking for new systems and resources. The Galactic Council had rejected the proposal. Too expensive, too risky, no expected return on investment. Humans had tried to get other species interested in expanding outward, instead of competing over the same territory. Nobody had listened. Now they were doing it anyway. And whatever they were building out there, they were building it alone. Jiwoo sent a message to Dr. Sun-Hee Yang. I think I understand what they are doing, she wrote. They are not trying to manage the decline. They are trying to change the entire game. They are building something at the rim. Something big. Sun-Hee's response came back within an hour. That would be very human. When they cannot fix a broken system, they build a new one. The question is what happens when they finish. That was indeed the question. The war was escalating. The old political structures were collapsing. And somewhere at the edge of known space, humanity was building something they thought was important enough to risk everything. Jiwoo had a feeling they were going to find out what it was very soon. And when they did, nothing would be the same again. 2 months into the war and everything had gotten worse faster than anyone predicted. The conflict started as border skirmishes between Vakrine and Thyssen forces. Now 4 more species were involved and the fighting had spread to 15 sectors. Supply lines broke down. Civilian transports got caught in crossfire. Refugee stations overflowed with displaced populations. The Vortan hierarchy's strategy of limited engagement collapsed within 3 weeks. Once they committed forces to protect their interests, they could not pull back without looking weak. And looking weak meant becoming a target, so they kept escalating, which forced everyone else to escalate in response. Captain Jiwoo Nam watched the casualty reports come in and felt sick. Millions dead already, billions more at risk if the war continued. The Galactic Council issued statements about restraint and proportionate response, but nobody listened. The old diplomatic framework had fallen apart completely. She had been requesting permission to meet with human representatives for weeks. Every request was denied or ignored. She was about to give up when she received an unexpected message. It came from Ambassador Hyunwoo Song, one of the human delegates who had walked out of the conclave. He offered to meet her on a neutral station, but not as an official negotiator. As an explanation, they met in a simple conference room with no flags or diplomatic protocols. Hyunwoo looked older than his official photos, with gray in his hair and tired lines around his eyes. He sat across from Jiwoo and got straight to the point. "We did not abandon you," he said. "I need you to understand that first. We refused to participate in a ritual that would only delay the inevitable." "The war happened anyway," Jiwoo said. "People are dying." "People were always going to die," Hyunwoo replied quietly. "That was the conclusion of our analysis. The conclave negotiations could not prevent this war. They could only postpone it. The question we faced was whether postponement was worth the cost. And you decided it was not?" "We decided there was a better use of our time and resources," Hyunwoo said. He activated a holographic display between them. It showed a star map of the galactic rim. "You have noticed our activity in this region." "Everyone has noticed," Jiwoo said. "But nobody knows what you are doing." "We are changing the game," Hyunwoo explained. "Your species have been locked in the same pattern for thousands of years. You compete over the same resources, the same territories, the same habitable worlds. Every negotiation is about dividing a limited supply of valuable things. And limited supply plus unlimited demand always equals conflict." He expanded the holographic display. Jiwoo saw dozens of new star systems marked with human survey data. Construction platforms, terraform operations, colony ships, resource extraction facilities. "We spent the last 2 months opening up new territory," Hyunwoo continued. "Territory equivalent to 40% of current settled galactic space. We are not taking it for ourselves. We are creating it for everyone." Jiwoo stared at the display. "That is impossible." Those systems were surveyed decades ago. They were classified as uninhabitable or resource poor. Classified as not worth the investment using standard methods, Hyunwoo corrected. "But we developed new terraform technology 5 years ago. New resource extraction techniques, new habitat construction systems. Suddenly those worthless systems became viable. We just needed time to build the infrastructure." A new figure appeared in the hologram. A man in an engineering uniform. "This is Engineer Sang-woo Park," Hyunwoo said. "He can explain the technical details better than I can." Sang-woo's image began speaking. "The galactic rim contains thousands of star systems that were previously considered useless. Too far from trade routes, planets too cold or too hot, asteroids with low mineral concentrations. But modern technology changes the calculation. We can terraform marginal worlds in 5 years instead of 50. We can extract resources economically from low-grade deposits. We can build habitats and systems with no planets at all." "The cost," Jiwoo said. "This must have cost enormous amounts of resources." "It did," Hyunwoo agreed. "We diverted our entire economy to this project. Every ship, every construction platform, every engineer and scientist. For 2 months we built nothing else. It was expensive, but still cheaper than fighting a war." "And you did this for the rest of us?" Jiwoo could not keep the skepticism out of her voice. "We did this for everyone, including ourselves," Hyunwoo said, "because the alternative was watching the galaxy tear itself apart over territory that was running out. We could participate in that decline, or we could try to create abundance instead of managing scarcity." He changed the holographic display again. Now it showed established way station hubs at the rim, resource distribution centers, colony registration offices. "We are offering this to any species that wants it. Not as charity, not as conquest, as opportunity. Come to the rim. Establish new colonies. There is space for everyone. There are resources for everyone. No competing claims. No historical grievances. Just empty space waiting to be filled." Jiwoo felt her mind racing. The Galactic Council will never accept this. You are undermining the entire established order. The established order is currently on fire, Hyun-woo said dryly. How much worse can we make it? But species have invested everything in their current territories. They have infrastructure, populations, political systems. You are asking them to abandon all that and start over. We are not asking anyone to abandon anything, Hyun-woo corrected. Stay and fight over the old territories if you want. We are just offering another option. An option where cooperation produces better outcomes than competition. Because there is enough for everyone out there, Ji-woo said, understanding clicking into place. Exactly. Out here in the old territories you are fighting over scraps. Resources that barely meet your needs. Worlds that cannot support your growing populations. Every gain for one species is a loss for another. Zero-sum thinking is rational when resources are limited. But we just made resources unlimited. Not unlimited, Ji-woo objected. Those rim territories will eventually fill up too. In 300 years, according to our projections, Hyun-woo said. And by then we will have opened up more space. The galaxy is very large, Captain. We have been fighting over the same small corner of it for millennia. It is time to spread out. Ji-woo looked at the star map again. She saw the human construction operations, the established way stations, the colony ships already heading toward new worlds. And she saw something else. Ships from other species. Not governments. Not official missions. But individuals. Small groups. Ships arriving at human-controlled space and being directed toward the rim. It has already started, she said. Yes, Hyun-woo confirmed. 3 weeks ago, a Thyssen transport captain ignored orders and brought her ship to our border. She had 4,000 refugees aboard and nowhere to take them. We gave her coordinates to a way station hub and sent construction materials with her. Last week she sent a message. They have established a colony on a previously empty world. They are growing food, building habitats, living. The Galactic Council issued sanctions against you, Ji-woo said. They declared this whole operation illegal. They declared it destabilizing, Hyun-woo said. Which it is. We are destabilizing a system that was already failing. The question is whether the new system we are building is better than the old one. He leaned forward. Captain Nam, you spent weeks trying to save the peace negotiations. You worked harder than most to find a solution. Tell me honestly. Do you think anything we could have negotiated at the conclave would have prevented this war? Ji-woo thought about the endless arguments. The compromises that satisfied nobody. The way every species protected its core interests while pretending to be flexible. She thought about the historical pattern that the humans had discovered. 37 wars all following the same script. No, she admitted quietly. The negotiations were doomed from the start. Then come to the rim, Hyun-woo said. See what we are building. Judge for yourself whether it is better than what we left behind. I cannot promise you perfection. I cannot promise there will be no conflicts or problems. But I can promise you this. Out there is enough space and resources that conflict becomes irrational instead of inevitable. Ji-woo sat in silence for a long moment. Then she asked the only question that mattered. What happens to the people still fighting the war? They keep fighting until they decide to stop, Hyun-woo said. We cannot force peace on anyone. We can only offer an alternative and hope that eventually enough people will choose possibility over grudges. 3 months after Ambassador Daewon Park walked out of the Grand Conclave, something unexpected happened. A group of Thyssen military officers made a decision that would change everything. They were commanding 3 damaged ships after a brutal engagement with Vakrine forces. Their fleet was scattered. Their supply lines were cut. Official orders told them to retreat to a defensive position and wait for reinforcements that would probably never come. Instead, they turned their ships toward human space. The officers knew they could be charged with desertion. They knew their families might face consequences, but they were tired of fighting over territories that had been contested for centuries. They were tired of dying for compromises that satisfied nobody. When they reached the human border, Commander Tae-yang Choi met them with the same polite professionalism he showed everyone. We want to go to the rim, the Thyssen commander said simply. We heard you were building something new there. Tae-yang looked at the damaged ships and exhausted crews. He could have turned them away. He could have cited regulations about deserters and political complications. Instead, he transmitted coordinates and said, follow these routes. There is a way station hub 3 days from here. They will help you get started. Captain Ji-woo Nam was court-martialed for abandoning her post. She had returned from meeting with Hyun-woo and submitted her resignation from the Thyssen military. Then she took her ship and headed for the rim without permission. The trial was short. They found her guilty of desertion, stripped her rank, and ordered her imprisoned. Then something strange happened. 12 more Thyssen vessels followed her example. Then 30. Then over 100. The military tried to arrest all of them, but there were too many. Admiral Hai-Jin Ko, the officer who had been monitoring the human border for months, submitted a formal request to transfer her entire patrol fleet to human coordination efforts. The request was denied. She went anyway. Within weeks, the trickle became a flood. Not just Thyssen ships. Vorten transports arrived carrying entire colony populations. Vakrine merchant vessels showed up, their crews tired of war-disrupting trade routes. Refugee ships from a dozen smaller species came looking for somewhere safe to go. Nobody was making species-wide decisions. No governments were officially participating. But individuals were choosing. Ship by ship, crew by crew, family by family. They chose to leave the war behind and build something new. Coordinator Ji Young Bae managed the massive logistics operation from Gateway Station, a converted asteroid at the rim. She had served in Human Diplomatic Corps for 20 years and thought she had seen everything. She was wrong. Nothing had prepared her for the chaos of dozens of species arriving daily, all needing food, shelter, coordinates to available worlds, and help setting up colonies. It is a mess, she admitted to Sangwoo Park during one of their daily coordination meetings. Half the species do not like each other. There are territorial disputes breaking out at 3 different colony sites. We had a fistfight in the main habitat yesterday between a Thyssen engineer and a Vortan pilot. What was the fight about? Sangwoo asked. The Thyssen said the Vortan was installing power systems wrong. The Vortan said Thyssen engineers always overcomplicate things. They argued for an hour, then started hitting each other. Security broke it up, and then what happened? Then they realized they were both wrong about how to install the system in low-gravity environments. They spent the rest of the day working together to figure out the right approach. Now they are friends, Sangwoo smiled. That is the rim for you. Out here there is too much work to waste time on old grudges. You fight for 5 minutes, then get back to building. He was right. The rim was not perfect. Species that had been shooting at each other weeks ago now worked side by side, building habitat domes, establishing farms, setting up mining operations. There were still arguments, still cultural clashes, still people who brought their old hatreds to new territories. But something was different. When disputes happened, people had options. If you could not get along with your Vakrine neighbors, you could move to a different colony world. There were dozens of options now, with more opening every week. The abundance of space and resources changed the incentive structure. Fighting cost you time and energy you needed for building. Cooperation produced faster, better results. Dr. Sun-Hee Yang published a paper analyzing the phenomenon. She called it forced cooperation through abundance. The central thesis was simple. Species cooperated at the rim not because they suddenly liked each other, but because cooperation was more profitable than conflict when resources were plentiful. We are not perfect, she wrote. We are not suddenly enlightened. We are just rational actors responding to new incentives. And out here, the incentives favor peace. The war in the old territories continued, but it was changing. The Vakrine Empire started losing territory not to military defeat but to mass exodus. Entire colonies departed for the rim, taking their infrastructure and knowledge with them. The Vortan hierarchy discovered they were mobilizing fleets to defend territories that people no longer wanted. The Galactic Council issued formal sanctions against humanity and anyone who joined the rim initiative. They declared it illegal, destabilizing, and a threat to galactic order. Then they watched helplessly as their own member species ignored them and kept leaving. 1 year after the walkout, Ambassador Daewon Park returned to Station Zenith 7. The Grand Conclave Hall was nearly empty now. Most species were either fighting a dying war or had already left for the rim. Only a handful of delegates remained, representing governments that still believed the old system could be saved. Daewon stood at the mediator's podium one more time. He looked older now, more tired, but there was something else in his eyes, something that might have been hope. I did not come to gloat, he said to the remaining delegates. I came to repeat the offer we have been making for a year. The door remains open. When you are ready to write a new script, we will be waiting at the rim. You destroyed the galactic order, the Vakrine representative said bitterly. You abandoned us in our time of need. We abandoned a system that was already broken, Day One replied. A system designed to fail. You can stay angry about that, or you can admit the truth. The old way was not working. It has not worked for thousands of years. We just finally stopped pretending it would. And your new way is better? The Fortan delegate asked. Your frontier is chaos. Species mixing together with no proper structure. No established hierarchies. No order. You are right, Day One agreed. It is chaos. It is messy and difficult, and sometimes things go wrong. But people are not killing each other over territory that was fought over 1,000 years ago. They are building new homes on worlds nobody wanted before, and that messy chaos is still better than your ordered decline into mutual destruction. He looked at each remaining delegate. I do not expect you to thank us. I do not expect you to understand yet why we did what we did. But I want you to know this. We did not give up on the galaxy. We just refused to watch it destroy itself following a script written by fear and tradition. The future is not being negotiated in this hall anymore. It is being built at the rim by people who chose possibility over grudges. Captain Jiwoo stood on the bridge of her new ship, the New Dawn. It was a mixed-species exploration vessel, pushing further into uncharted space beyond the established rim colonies. Her crew was strange and wonderful. Admiral Haijin commanded the tactical division. Engineer Minho maintained the systems. Dr. Sun-hee studied new alien artifacts they discovered. There were also 2 Vortan navigators, a Vakrine medical officer, and 17 other crew members from 9 different species. A year ago, some of these people had been trying to kill each other. Now they were exploring together, mapping new systems, looking for more worlds to open up. She received a message from Gateway Station. Engineer Sang-woo was coordinating the arrival of 17 new colony fleets. They had a Vortan philosopher teaching human children about pre-war literature. They had Thyssen engineers adapting human fold drive technology to work with Vakrine power systems. Every week brought something new, some unexpected collaboration nobody had planned. We are not perfect, Sang-woo's message said. We still have fights and problems and people who cannot let go of the past. But we are not fighting over the same dead worlds anymore. We are building something new, something better. Something that would not exist if humans had stayed at that negotiation table and pretended we could compromise our way to peace. The war in the old territories eventually ended, not through military victory or negotiated settlement. It just became irrelevant. Too many people had left. Too many resources had been diverted to the rim. The government still fighting discovered they were spending enormous amounts to defend territories their citizens no longer wanted. The peace came not because anyone won, but because everyone stopped playing a game that had no winners. And it all started with 17 humans who had the courage to walk away from a negotiation that would have changed nothing, in search of a solution that could change everything. They did not solve the problem they were given. They made the problem obsolete. They did not prevent the war everyone feared. They built something better than peace. They built possibility. Years later, students studying galactic history would ask why humans abandoned the conclave. Their teachers would explain about pattern recognition and predictive models and the inevitability of conflict over scarce resources. But the real answer was simpler. Humans looked at a broken system and asked themselves one question: what if we just built a better one instead? And then they did.